So you see, I have PartMaker open, and I am using an SV20RB post because it's a fairly complex machine. It's a Swiss. It has gang, turret, backworking, so lots of tool posts. So this post would need a lot of customizing for the user. So once you're in your process table, the post is going to post code starting at the top process and down through the bottom. So that's how it works. So once you have your process table established, you can generate some code either by right-clicking and saying quick NC program view or using Alt Q. I'll be using Alt Q through this demonstration. It's just a little faster. So Alt Q, and our code comes up. I'm going to use this align function because I just like it. Okay, so once we're in here, how do you start editing your own post for the first time? So you can click anywhere in the open area, right click, and then you will select enable config by click option. Now, the very first time this happens, you're going to get this prompt. It's just saying, would you like to create a non-distribution post file? So what that is a copy that you can mess with to your heart's desire. It's not going to mess up the distribution post that we had sent you. So yeah, play around with it. Don't be scared. Save the distribution post in case you mess up. And then also one disclaimer is that our company policy, and I believe Autodesk policy, is to not support customer edited ND posts. So if you send us a change you want, we can't touch it. However, we can send you the instructions on how to make that change to your file, or we can make the change to the distribution file, and then you can compare the logic and just copy the changes over if you'd like. So I just want to mention that because I don't want you to spend 10 hours editing your post just to get upset that we can't touch it. But this is really handy. This is what I believe sets PartMaker apart from most of the other CAM softwares, is that you can edit your post and customize it as much as you want. So we'll just say yes, we want to create a non-distribution post file. And then it's going to open config post. I have 2025 installed on my computer. And it's going to ask you for a customer PIN. Now, the customer PIN was kind of removed by Autodesk, most of the functionality. If you have one, input it because you can tie some customizations to that in the post. But otherwise, you don't need it. So if you don't have one, don't freak out. Just hit create non-distribution post file. And it's going to say that wherever that file is, that your other post is saved. And then it'll rename it ND. That way you can tell that this is your ND post. Okay. All right. So now we have config post open and we have a .pst file loaded here. And PartMaker automatically did that. Now I do want to open up my folder real quick, and I'll bring that over in 1 second. Okay, so if you are not a Swiss or Turnmill user, I just want to point this out. If you have a subspindle, like on a Swiss or Turnmill, you are going to get a sub file, and you're going to get the .pst file. The .pst is your main spindle. I'll just be calling it the main spindle file. And the sub file is for your subspindle code. This is so that you can customize each spindle as you need. So it's very handy. But if you're on a mill or EDM or 2-axis lathe, you're only going to see the .pst. So that's why there's 2 in here. Okay. So to edit the post, we also need to open our sub file. So I would go back here and I would open up Job Optimizer, and we need to replace the distribution file. If I don't, and I right click again and say enable config by click, it's going to create another non-distribution file. So what we need to do is, we need to first load our ND post. Okay. And then if I right click and say enable config by click, now you're not going to get that error anymore. You only have to do that once. Okay, now that we have our ND post loaded, we can use PartMaker's config by click. What this is really nice for is if I go down to here, let's look at this, where this tool 300 is being posted from. It's showing us that it's coming from line 10 of the M1S0 moving stock section of the post on the turning side of the post in the PST file, so the main file for process 1. Now, you don't really need to know that. It's just helpful to know that that's what it means, but you can just double click on this and it'll bring you to that exact line of code so you can start messing around. Okay, and I'm not going to do it here. We don't have enough time. I'll make some other changes though, so you'll see. But that's what's really helpful. But if I go back to PartMaker and I go to my sub side, and on this, channel 3 is in the middle, channel 2 is on the side. I don't know why they did that, but they did. So you can see these are coming from the sub file. And if I double click here, okay, it does load this file. But I have had issues where it did not load that, so I'm going to do it manually. in case you get an error. Uh-oh, part maker's freezing now. Just give me 1 sec. Okay, we only have one loaded. Okay, so if you do get an error and it won't load it, you can simply go back to config post. This ships with part maker, so just find it, in here, put it on your desktop. So open config post. So we're gonna have a second window. If I hover over this, you'll see there's 2 windows. This doesn't have a file loaded yet, so I'll say file, open. I'm gonna go to that folder. Now you'll see it's only showing our PST files. You have to go to this dropdown, select sub, okay, and then you can choose your MD. Okay, so now we keep both of these open while we're editing. Just leave them there, and you'll go back and forth between PartMaker and those through the entire time. Okay, so now we got those basics squared away. I want to talk about the 3 items we're supposed to cover today. And the first one is adjusting arc and compensation directions. So let me scroll up here. Okay, this is the first operation on the sub side that has a G3. So a lot of these machines with multiple tool posts, sometimes the G2s and G3s need to be swapped, and they need to be swapped only for a certain scenario. Like, for example, maybe in mill polar, your G2s and G3s are only backwards on the backworking, okay? We can adjust that separate from the turret. So I'm gonna just click on this line. Now our motion is what's gonna do the G2 or G3. Okay, and to change that, we have a couple areas. Now, if you're on a 2-axis lathe or a mill, you only have one tool post. You would go either into what's called configure mill or configure turn. If you have one of those, the other one will be grayed out, the one that you can't, that doesn't apply. Let's just say configure turn. You can go down here to preparatory functions, and you can change all that info here. Okay, and coolant codes and all this stuff can be changed here because you only have one tool post. You don't need to be customizing it for different ones, and you only have one spindle. But for turn mill and Swiss, what we need to do is go to settings, and we go down to faces info. And this is a feature that they put in so you can customize each face window. And if I click on any of these, I'll just do turn. You can customize it based on the tool post, like I mentioned. So in this case, it looks like the turret uses G3 and backworking uses G3 as well, but sometimes these would be opposite. Let me see what tool post. Oh, okay, that's a turn. So oh wait, no, what the tool post was that? Sorry about that. It's backworking, okay. So if we wanted to change those G3s to G2s, all we have to do is change this, or caps on, G2, G3, and then most of the time we change these as well. I would say 9 times out of 10. But for some reason, sometimes these don't need to be changed. So you can see these are going to post opposite based on your face window first, and then based on your tool post. Now you can go through every tab, and you can see some don't even have a G2, G3 because that's mill and index. But you can go through all of these and customize them individually, which is really handy because we do see a lot of situations like it looks like mill polygon is opposite from mill ZX for whatever reason. Okay, so that's where you would change that. Now, let's say you're using the turret. You need to change the turret, and the turret is backwards on both the main spindle and the sub spindle. We would have to change it here. And then remember, you have to go to your main spindle. We'd have to go down at settings, face windows, turn, and we would also have to change that here. So sometimes you're going to need to be changing things in 2 areas. If you needed to change things for all the milling, you obviously have to go through all these tabs on both spindles, so that can get a little cumbersome. But this is a very simple fix that you can do on your own. Okay, next we need to talk about, let me go back and show you that this did change. Sorry about that. So I just did Alt Q and it reloaded the post, and I must not have saved this. So let's save it. This was in turn, and I did swap those. Okay, save. Now if I go back here, click on the screen, do Alt Q, the G3 will now be a G2. Okay, great. Now let's talk about formatting numeric values. So we get this a lot with threading, tapping, that type of stuff, where this Q value for some reason on your machine may need to be 5 digits. On someone else's machine, because maybe it was an older model, it only needed to be 4 digits. Or maybe you've changed a parameter of some sort. So we need to tell PartMaker this value needs to be 5 digits rather than 4. So let me double click on the sub file again. And while we're in here, we can see what reserved word the Q value is pulling from. Now, all of these items in these little parentheses, these are going to be what we call reserved words. And if I right click and say what's step 1, it tells us, this specifies the tool step along the tool axis, and it's coming from this exact field. So information you had typed in this field, it's going to output it there. And it may do some math if needed, and that's where formatting comes in. So I'm going to say close. To get to formatting, and actually let me draw your attention over to the right-hand side. We have lots of different types of reserved words, but if we go to numeric, these numeric reserved words are all the ones that can be modified with our words information formatting. So if you're confused about one, you can just click on numeric, and the numeric values are here. That means it's only going to post a number. It will not post a letter. It cannot do it. Other string words can, but these ones can't. So go to configure turn. We'll go down to words information. Okay. Now, these are in alphabetical order, so we'll just look for step 1, and I know it's on page 6. And right now, I'll talk about the settings for step 1. So just look at this column or this row right here. Now, the lead column, if this were checked, then it would post any leading zeros. Now we have the option to strip leading zeros from the code, but if this is checked, this will override that setting. So if you need the leading zeros, we can check that. We don't need that here. But in this case, we do need trailing zeros because a lot of people also stripped trailing zeros. And you can see that was 2400. So we need those 2 zeros at the back. We're going to need an additional one here in a second. Decimal point is usually checked on because most lines of code in your G code are going to have decimals. But for this Q value, we have that unchecked because we do not want a decimal. A plus sign would generate an actual plus sign in the code. I've never seen it used, but I'm sure there's a scenario where it needs to be. And then unsigned value will force this to be positive. Now, if you're confused about any of this, you could just say F1, and it takes you to our help reference page for that exact dialog box. But yeah, that helps. Now under format, this is where we have the number of digits that we're going to output. So this is allowing for up to 3 digits on the left side of the decimal. And then this is allowing for 5 digits on the back side of the decimal. Now it only posted 4 digits, but we know it can go up to 5. So rather than try and change this to 6, which isn't going to work, all I will do is multiply this by 10. Okay, you can multiply any of these values by whatever you want. You could do -1, you could do +2, you could do 10, you could do 10,000. Whatever you want to multiply your value by, you can do that here. Okay, so now this will affect any code using step 1. So I'll say, okay. What I'll also do is right click and I'm going to say find step 1 to make sure I didn't screw up a million lines of code. And it's only being used on our turning operations. So we know those are going to need to be the same. And so it's okay to change that. And let me make sure that I hit save because I think I forgot. No, I did. Okay. So now I'll hit save up here. And that is going to change to 5 digits when we go back to here. So remember this 2400, and I'll just do Alt Q. It's going to load this file, and we'll go down, and now it's 24,000. So that one in particular is an easy change to make, but there are some times where there's words information in here that you know, may be complex to change. You have to do a lot of different math. But you can look through these and kind of see how it's being outputted. But just make sure if you do change something, you need to know that it's definitely going to be changed everywhere else. If you only need it in one scenario, like let's say I go into our linear moves, this would be just straight moves. Actually, let me go linear move on mill. Let's say we only needed the Y values to double on 5 axis simultaneous. Then we could just do math on this one variable and not mess up the others. So ×2, oops. And you can just do that. So that's an option as well. If you don't want to change all of them, you just want to change one scenario. Remember, you have to change this on your main spindle as well. So we would want to go here change this to 10 as well for turning. And then if milling was incorrect and you needed to change it for that, in this case, it's just step. So you could also change it here. You'd have to change it in 4 places: main spindle turn, main spindle mill, sub spindle turn, sub spindle mill. But we're not testing those ones. So let me just save the sub file. Let's go back and we'll talk about the next example. If I go up here, we are using high pressure codes on our very first operation, the facing operation. Now, especially with Swiss, there are a lot of different plumbing lines, and some machines make it very easy to move these plumbing lines around as needed. And so we can customize your coolant codes based on just your shop or maybe just one specific machine. And it's very simple to do that. So I'm just going to double click here. Now we're in the main spindle. I'm not going to change any logic, so don't worry about what any of this means. We have an option in settings. So settings, multi-coolant info, and now I can change it based on the gang or turret because those are the 2 tool posts configured for the main spindle. You'll notice this machine does have back working, but we can't use back working on our main spindle. So we would have to change that on the sub side. Let's go to gang 1. Now, on the right side, you'll see tool ranges. We assign coolant codes based specifically on the tool number that it's going to be using. So in the case of tools 15 through 20, you can't use high pressure. 6 through 10 is the same. 11 through 14, we have high pressure. And when I go through 1 through 5, you'll see it's different. So these are different. Now, let's say you wanted this range to actually be 1 through 4. And then you wanted to do a new range just for tool 5. Now we have the option to insert more codes here for tool 5. But the tool we're going to be changing is for tool 1 through 4. So I'm going to say maybe this code is wrong. And the coolant off code is wrong for high pressure. So let's just say we really need it to be demo high pressure or demo off. And then we just say apply. Okay. And that will change it. You'll see right here. It's going to change that. So Alt Q. Dang it, I forgot to save again. Apparently this is a common problem for me. Okay. There it is. Demo high pressure, HP coolant on. Okay, so you can customize those to your liking based on whatever plumbing you have. Now you would have, if you are going to do this for multiple different machines using, like, let's say you have 3 star SV20s and you need them for, 3 completely different high pressure codes, then of course you're going to need to save like maybe versions 163A, then version 163B. You'll have to have a different post for each setup unless you want to go back in and change it every single time, which I don't think you would want to. Now, remember, on this machine, we can do this for our backworking is our sub spindle as well, but on this machine, the turret can also be used on the sub. So let's say the high pressure code needed to be changed on both the main and sub spindle. Remember to change it in both files, the main and the sub.